everybody. Todd Mariana, Deep Gears Mastering. I just wanted to, explain this mod that I've done. It is a heating wire mod. So what I've done is taken the voltage that comes from the NG rack over 307, cable 307, which then interconnects with a couple of other cables. The one that we're interested in is actually AS304, which attaches to the lathe body via AM304. That is what actually carries the heating wire current. So it goes up that cable into the lathe body and then out the cables out of the back of the lathe body to the suspension box, through the suspension box to the front, and then out into the actual cutting head where there's the terminals for the heating wire. So, this mod leverages two key pieces of information. Number one, knowing that, AS304 could be modified. So I can pull that cable and I can pull the cover and I can disconnect the positive line, which happens to be 1A, I believe, and then I can wire in two wires and a switch, essentially. So the switch would, allow current to flow or not up through the rest of the cabling, the body, the suspension, and then the cutter head itself. So that's one thing, is knowing, where that connects and where I could disconnect it and put in my own line. This line goes to a board that essentially has a relay on it. The relay has some transistors to translate the other key piece of information, which is, in fact, the switch right here, our good old vacuum switch. This vacuum switch right here is a two-position switch. So it actually, there's two contacts in there. One of them is connected when it's down, and that's the one that's used to actually turn on the vacuum. The other contact is connected when it's up. So this contact is open when the switch is down, and it's connected when it's up. So I use two transistors to flip-flop that input. So when it's down, then I'm actually getting a signal that I can use to flip a transistor that then flips a 5-volt line, which connects the relay. So again, this extra connector that's in there that I've wired a wire pair from, it is open when the switch is down. It is closed when the switch is up. So we flip-flop that input, and we have a wire running out from that switch. I have modified my AS cable, so I have a wire running from that, two wires. So I have terminal blocks on my board. I just connected those up, gave my board power, and lo and behold, now I will only have heat when the vacuum is running, which is the specification, because otherwise, if the vacuum's not running and you apply current and you have heat, if there's any bits of chip that are on your stylus, they can get baked on at that point, and that causes issues in trying to cut nice, clean, silent grooves. So to avoid any potential of ever having chip stuck to your stylus, you can put in my mod. My mod will then ensure that the heat is never applied unless the actual vacuum is running.
Okay, so here we can see the wiring layout for the VMS70. This is from the manual. And now I'm showing you how the actual 12 volts for the heating flows through the system from the NG rack to the AS rack and then up through the AM body. So 304, AS304 is the actual two-shell connector that I modified. Okay, and this is the diagram that allows you to see where the 12 volts is coming from and where it's going to, and you can narrow down the exact pins. So now I've highlighted heating, and in fact it's pin 1A that gets the positive 12 volts. There's actually an error on this. You'll see brake is now red and it's moved up. That's the 20 volt line. Brake used to be down lower in the diagram, so that's an error. This is the actual schematic from the NG rack. You can see that the 12 volts for the heating is now highlighted. Okay, and again, pin 1A is the positive, and as you see again, 2A is the brake. This is the schematic that I came up with. It's very, very simple. You're taking a 12 volt wall wart power supply, putting it through a 7805, and then the transistors that I talked about, one for flipping, the other one for flipping the 5 volts to the reed switch. Here's the AS304 connector. Okay, you see I took the hood off. The 1A wire is actually the yellow one right there. Okay, it's the one that's right underneath my thumb on the top. Okay, now you can see I've desoldered it, and I've soldered it to a black wire. Okay, and then I soldered in another wire lead that connects to the actual pin where the yellow cable used to connect. Now you see that I put nice shrink wrap on that, so there's no possibility of it shorting out in there. Okay, I've reassembled the tuchel. I've now cable tied this wire pair to it, and you can see I've installed it in the lathe, and you can see the cable pair coming off. Okay, I had already pulled my switch array and wired in this cable pair.
Okay, right now I'm going to really quickly demonstrate the cable that I just installed and modified. Right now the two leads for the heating are right here. They are disconnected. So if I drop my cutter head, so I'm going to drop it, you will see that we've got nothing on the heat, which is as expected, right? So if I was to, take these two leads and connect them, which I will do right now, you'll see as I connect them, the heat flows. So I got the right ones. We're ready to install my board.
Okay, you can see the board is all wired in. We've got the switch and the heat hooked up to the terminal blocks on the board. Very simple design. Took me maybe 5 minutes to build it out. Now I'm about to hang it to the top of the NG rack there with just a cable tie. And hey, that's good enough for now.
Okay, I've now installed the mod, and I've just put it in for test purposes, so it's not real pretty. I'm going to hide it in the cable tray in a second. But as you can see, if I put my cutter head down, I have no voltage across the heat, even though this potentiometer is turned up. There's nothing going on. However, if I turn on the vacuum, and I now lower the head, you'll see I get heat. So the mod works. Now, the only time I will ever have heat when my head is dropped is when the vacuum's on. And this is Tyler. Say hi, Tyler.